this last weekend really put my mind at ease in a very different way. I felt like it was the unknowns kind of are now out there, and I get a sense of how to navigate, at least in my mind, that uncertainty. I'm not comfortable with it still, but definitely navigate in such a way. And this week I have a much brighter outlook on great things. And I'm a total optimist, so it must be really bright.
Well, hey, it takes one to know one, right? I am also likewise very much an eternal optimist, sometimes even to a fault. No, I would agree. I think I noticed towards the end of last week and even today, the conversations even feel like they're starting to shift with a lot of our clients and other owners to something called, well, once we get through this and we start to emerge and the new normal starts to set in, here's what it might look like to be in a position where you've actually been planting seeds and getting to a place where you can thrive once this season is over. And that's just very different than 2 weeks ago when everyone was saying, oh my gosh, I gotta run to the store and get my toilet paper, and I got to run to the bank and get my PPP. And so things are starting to shift. So that to me is encouraging.
Absolutely.
Well, we are glad to be with you guys today. We posted this this concept for today. We're calling the toilet paper myth, and Tim and I are going to kind of unpack that with you. But we really want this to be, as always, an open conversation with everyone here. So please give us a shout out in the chat. Raise your hand if you want to join this conversation. We'll be asking some questions as we go along, so we expect you to jump in. In terms of who we are, Tim, we're here to help everyone thrive in life and in business and in career. And that's our mission here. So that's really what today is all about when it's all said and done.
Yeah, we believe that all business owners have the opportunity to control their own future and understanding what they want to go with their business and life and career. So our hope with this daily briefing is just to give you some understanding in the moment, but also give you some kind of larger term perspective on what you're really trying to achieve as a creative business owner. So we're thankful that you're here. I'm going to start off with this myth, with this observation that I made, why we're calling it the toilet paper myth. I was kind of hunkered in a little bit in my office for a week or so. And then my wife sent me to the store, and I just went to a local Albertsons. And I honestly was going to, just out of curiosity, really see, is the place really out of toilet paper? And not only was it out of toilet paper, it was out of toilet paper and napkins and anything else paper related, paper towels. There was nothing at all available, maybe some handy wipes. And I thought, like, what a curious moment. I don't think I've ever would have imagined that to be true. And anybody went to the store, you probably had that same aha moment, thinking, we're in a crisis. Like we're in a horrible shape. Every piece of paper is gone out of the store. And then I was still shopping, and I'm not a very good shopper, so I kind of wander through the aisles because I don't know where anything is. And I ended up in the pharmaceutical aisle. And Joel, like, what was still there were the Tylenol, the Theraflu, the items to kind of rejuvenate your body when it comes over a flu. And I thought to myself, everybody got the wrong stuff. Like it's a flu virus, and the flu stuff is still here, and the toilet paper is gone. And I thought, at that moment, why do we do this to ourselves? What is this thing that leads us into a panic? And because everyone else is doing it, we think that's the problem, and we run there. But the real problem was a flu. The real problem is a bigger issue, and we're not dealing with the real issues. So that's the premise behind the toilet paper myth, is that we get the wrong thing. And we have this underlying fear of getting it wrong. Your logic says, I need Theraflu, but everyone's getting toilet paper. So you think, I must be wrong. It must be about toilet paper, and you run to that.
Well, because in a way, part of it is that herd mentality. I mean, it does serve us well at times, right? Like, we've all been in this situation where, well, if everyone's rushing over there to get that thing, then I guess I should get it too. Or that stock price is going up, I guess I should go and buy it also. there's some sort of fundamental possibility that, well, if everyone else is doing it, then maybe I should too. But is it more fear that drives this, or is it actual, I don't know, practical wisdom from, oh, this served me well in the past, fuck doing what everybody else was doing. So yeah, what's the thought there?
Yeah. So I would actually like to hear from some of the people listening in on, now that this has played itself out over a few weeks, has there been any aha moments as a creative business owner that you initially panicked and there was worry, and now you, a few weeks later, realize, I went for the toilet paper. I went for what everyone else was afraid of, instead of recognizing, maybe in a critical thinking way or in a logical way, oh, okay, I might have got it wrong. And here's some thoughts, because I think of this, that items that I've come across over the last few weeks is, some business owners are realizing that they didn't deal with the fact they had all their eggs in one basket. So there was too many jobs, too many things contingent on one client alone. And now they realize that, wow, I had it wrong. Or,
oh, man. Yeah, well, I hate that one, because I was a victim of that one when I was running Impossible Pictures, that we had this one big gorilla client, as we call them, which when we went through the recession of 08, 09, the things, when that one big client goes dark on you, oh man, you can watch 40, 50, 60% of your business just suddenly come to a grinding halt. And you knew that you should have taken care of it then, but now here you are and you're stuck. But I'm curious, who here has faced that already? And then what are some other big questions that we've been hearing owners say?
Yeah, Ryan Summers is chiming in too, is saying, beyond just the panic of everyone going after something, which was at one point in plenty of good supply, they also have an industrial problem, right? It's beyond the psychological. The industry itself wasn't able to keep up with the items that are needed. And he's wondering if within our industry, there's something relatable to that as well.
Very interesting. That's a good question. I love this comment from PJ about, I noticed it less about a single client, but more about stronger relationships versus ones we didn't maintain are making all the difference right now. Yeah, I'm curious if that's even something you could elaborate on, PJ. If you want to jump in, of course, feel free to raise your hand. We would love to hear you expand on that, because I think I get what you're saying, and there's actually something quite insightful there. Let's see if PJ, oh, there he is. Come on in. Oh, and he's on video with us too. What's up, Mr. PJ?
You have to mute yourself, PJ. Hey.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you, man. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good. Happy Monday to you, mister. Tell me more about this thought here, because I think I get what you're saying, but I would love to hear you put it in your own words.
Well, so for instance, the clients that everything, before I say what I'm about to say, everything comes down to just creatively and executionally doing a really good job, first and foremost. But, sometimes that's not enough. And there's instances where we have created a really, really sort of a strong bond with particular clients, and really foster the relationship. Like, I don't want to say it's not just about taking them out for drinks or stuff like that, but really creating kind of a bit of a friendship and a bond that way. And those types of clients are a lot easier to hit up in a time like this, to be like, hey, how are you? What's going on? What do you got cooking? How can we help? Because there's a trust built, you know what I mean? And then the ones where even if we did the job and did a really good job, but just sort of kept it at arm's length or didn't really go after it the same way, it's a lot harder right now to even hit up those clients to be like, hey, what do you got? What's going on? Because there's just not as strong of a connection.
So PJ, if you were gonna phrase it this way, looking back now, I didn't realize, now fill in the blank.
Yeah, unfortunately I did realize. I just didn't either guide my team, or it really falls entirely on my responsibility, but I just didn't prioritize it enough, I would say.
It being, meaning there's the tendency, I think, as the owner, that there are a lot of opportunities, clients, projects that go down, and you kind of know. we really should be solving the problem, deeper problem for these guys. We should be engaging with them on a different level of business relationship. But I'm busy. They'll, they always come around with another project. I'll worry about that some other day. Is that?
So that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. I think a lot of business owners were in that situation. When the going is good, you can kind of stay on the surface, can't you? It's good enough and you're making money. You don't have to challenge yourself very hard. So it doesn't have to do a lot of work to get a lot of money, even though you're not creating a lot of value. And today you might say to yourself, I didn't realize how valuable I was or how valuable I wasn't for that client. And this virus, the real problem showed up, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I think on a good day, if you choose to, you can be responsible to take anything, even a small project, and make it more valuable than just the POAs that you're getting signed and executing on, like in the sense of like, you can have conversations, you can feel responsible for that client's business, even if it is just an end tag. And if you say that and have those types of conversations, I think it makes it a lot easier in times like this to be able to turn that into something else. But if you're just sort of like, okay, here's the creative brief, we executed it, here's your end tag, thank you very much, even if it went great, I think it makes it a lot harder in times like these when everything's kind of clamped down a little bit.
So I think it's safe to say, PJ, that what you're sharing is almost hey, moving forward, this is going to become a fundamental habit or practice. I do business. I will always foster these types of relationships, no matter what, even when times are good.
Yeah,
totally. I think that's super accurate.
And not like too often we focus on just the deliverables. We can limit it to the deliverables, thinking that's all the client wants, or we make it about the deliverables and not about the big picture project. So we're too focused on what the client is asking us to do and say, well, that's below us, or that's not our favorite type of deliverable, our favorite type of work. So we're going to say no to that project instead of realizing there's a client or a client in need. Yeah, PJ, that's a perfect one. I think that's one of those where you kind of, when you look at the problem at hand, you're not seeing the big picture. You're not doing critical thinking and recognize the opportunity. And in some cases, life was kind of easy and we didn't have to deal with those all the way.
Yeah, I mean, and some of it is, look, some of it is hard, even on a good day is really hard, like to even know if you have the right of way to even bring up something like that to a client, even COVID-19 aside. Like even 3 months ago, you're like, am I even allowed to say that to a client? But yeah, I saw this tagline from the studio in London that I adore so much called Feature Deluxe, and they had this tagline that said there are no rules. And it was like, yeah, you guys are right. Like, you can just say, they can ignore you. They can say, hey, we don't need you to care about that, but I certainly think they'll admire the enthusiasm for it.
Well, thanks for sharing that little expansion on that concept, because I think a lot of owners here are also maybe having a similar realization. But I actually want to put the question back out there again, Tim, that we're asking. Like, anyone else here, what is the thing if I said, okay, looking back now, I didn't realize ... like, how would you fill in that blank? Because I think, Tim, I've heard a few other common themes from some owners that I can share, but do you have one top of mind?
Well, I'll say like maybe even employee and freelancer relations. I'm finding that people didn't realize how flexible they could be, or how locked in they felt with certain contract relationships with freelancers or with staff, really how valuable or how to work with staff in a different way. They kind of put people in their place and left them there, and then brought in another person and built their team instead of going back to their staff and asking for more. Now that the things have shifted, they've went back to their team and said, hey, how would we do this project just working with our internal staff? And it changed the method of producing the project, but they're getting projects done without needing outsiders or freelancers. And they didn't have to change the deliverables or even change the budget to do it. That subjective nature of getting a project done and having a strong team that can do it, very different sense. But when the going was good, or when they looked at problems before, they had these beliefs that wouldn't work for them.
Well, how about this one? I didn't realize how much we really didn't need an office as much as I thought we did. I mean, I'm not saying that there are people saying they would prefer to work like this, meaning remotely, all the time. But I have definitely heard quite a few owners saying, "Oh, I thought our business model was totally dependent on all of us being in the same room, and wow, we've adapted pretty quickly and realized now that maybe we were a little slow to adapt to that idea a few months ago, but now we've just been forced to. And hey, there's actually some interesting advantages that I just didn't realize were there otherwise."
So I put in that category of like the danger of following others, or the symptom of following others. And often what we say to ourselves are these big, broad, conclusive statements of something like, everyone does it this way, or no one would ever accept that idea. No one would ever allow us to, or my client hasn't ever done that, therefore they'll never do that. And we stop in our belief. We stop really critically thinking through what the problems are and coming up with creative solutions on the other side. And as creative business owners, we have opportunities to think through what are creative solutions to a problem, and not allow us to create that blockage in our mind, to accept the status quo, or to not push the industry further. And that need for innovation, that need to keep on growing in a creative way, innovating in a creative way, is how we always separate ourselves, move ourselves away from the pack. But man, oh man, it's so, especially when everyone's doing it and the money's good, we really stop that. So necessity being the mother of innovation really is a true analogy, isn't it? Like I think of the AC/DC, Joel. Really, when we were trying to think through big industry problems and how that was hard to get off the ground and really difficult because there wasn't like an industry need at that time. We were looking at something that it wasn't critical enough to process.
Well, let me expand on that for a quick second, because I think that's an interesting example. For everyone's benefit, the AC/DC was an idea that we at RevThink got behind with a few other big names and helpers and owners in the industry. It was the alliance of content and design companies. But the basic idea was, hey, we need a group, like an association, to help bring everyone together, develop best practices, come up with industry standards, those kinds of things. And it's amazing how when times are high, when everyone's busy and everyone's making a lot of money, it's like, yeah, do we really need that? The status quo is pretty good. And then now hearing Carrie Smith last week, the entertainment attorney that we talked with last week, talk about, actually this is the perfect time for the little guys to actually start pushing back on the bad payment terms and bad contracts and burdensome insurance requirements and things like that. But it's funny how, I guess as human beings, our human nature, we just are in a state of, when things are good, we just kind of want things to stay good and don't rock the boat.
And I remember there was a moment where Discovery came out with their new payment terms, and it clearly was being thrown in the face of every business owner that now you are going to be funding Discovery's projects for 90 days. And then if you completed it, they would be happy to pay you. And you realize it's even beyond sequential liability. There's just no way anybody should take those terms. And that it was a decision point for many business owners. They were asking questions in our Slack group and our Facebook group. Is anyone doing this? Should I follow along with it? Some people just said, well, if Discovery wants it, I'm going to make it happen. Others pushed back. And inside of this allegiance, we had 6 or 7 business owners, and we challenged them to write a statement that said, hey, this group of people, refuse to do this as a group. And all of a sudden that separated our crowd, didn't it, Joel? Like that meeting was like, it almost broke up the AC/DC right then. because people realized, wait a second, if I sign my name to that, if I put my John Hancock literally on that thing, I've been putting myself at risk and I might not get future projects, regardless if it was an unreasonable request. And that thought, that critical thinking that must be necessary to be a leader, to put yourself out there and separate yourself out, sometimes is risky. And it might or might not be with it. I don't blame people for making the business decisions that they had to, but there are moments we have to separate from the common thinking to make that difference. And I believe the people I have on my bookshelf behind me are the people we respect, are the ones that did that ahead of us, and we're thankful for it. But when our time comes, we don't often do it. Yeah, you're cringing.
So I know you're being tough on all of us, but I love it. I'm looking at Robert's comment he dropped here from Creative Mammal saying, I didn't consider the emotional response required. And I think that's a really interesting point because, yeah, you have so much invested, so much at risk when you go through one of these seasons, and then you look back and you have no idea the changes you were about to go through. But yeah, Tim, do you remember there was that, the CFO, the memo from the CFO, I think at Discovery, that had gone to a few of our clients, and we talked about it at a cohort dinner, remember, in New York? And everyone was in arms, like, what? They're asking us to reduce our rates and send them a plan of how we're going to cut all of our prices, whatever it was, 15 or 25% across the board. This is outrageous. But then when it came time to like sign that Declaration of Independence, or go out into the tea harbor and throw all the tea into the water, it's amazing how, well, I don't know, things are pretty good right now. I'm not sure I want to rock the boat. But to your point, yeah, innovation is always risky. And if Marcel was here, I wish I would ask him to share his thoughts on it, because I would say he's someone that I find has a really good balance of, he's got a strong head on his shoulders. He's not crazy and just a bomb thrower. He's protecting himself. He's being wise, but at the same time, he also, his opportunity is always exceeding his capacity.
Yeah.
He always knows that, you know what, if I piss off somebody at Discovery on principle because it's the right thing to do, I know that my life will go on, my career will go forward because this is right. And I have other people that know I'm right, and I'm confident. I have some sort of internal confidence that I'm going to get through this, and this is the right thing to do, even though it's scary.
So it's so often when somebody speaks about an oncoming wave or something that's dominating the populace that they can't see, the term we often use is wake up. Isn't that interesting that we say like wake up? And what that term means clearly isn't just the physical sleeping, but this idea that your mind is at rest and it's not awake to see the issues at hand. And it's to shake you awake to say, hey, open your eyes, start recognizing something in a different way than you're used to, and be afraid of what you aren't seeing. Be afraid of being asleep. That Rip Van Winkle moment of regret, of like, what are you about ready to regret? How do you wake up to something new? And for me, like I really push my mind in such a way that I have practiced critical thinking in such a strong way that I probably even spoiled too many conversations by being a critical thinker and not just being relaxed and chill. Like, Joel, how many times you'd be like, okay, Tim, just chill out. You don't have to go that far with your crazy ideas.
Right. No, I lost count.
Yeah, we call that rev thinking internally. Oh, there's Tim rev thinking again. But that wake up moment to me is something that's so important as a leader. I'm not even saying as a business owner. I get that we have to be able to do the dance. There is a market that you're marketing to and you're doing business within. And I'm not saying constantly break it. Don't just push it for the heck of pushing it. But critical thinking allows you to ask what if over and over and over again, or even ask the question why over and over again, to realize, is it going the right direction? Are these what my team needs? Or is this the moment my client recognizes my value? And am I actually fulfilling what I know to be true? And then instead of just what's expected of me. And as to distinguish yourself or pull yourself away from common thinking, you have to wake up. You have to be able to see things hear things and do things differently than others.
Yeah, I was on a call earlier today. I'm going to mention John Paget, who's here. I can see in the live stream, and we were just having a conversation, basically just asking this question of like, okay, well, yes, we're in this season, but that doesn't mean we're just waiting. We're still planting seeds. We're still investing. We're still trying to create a future. And then, okay, now what? Like, who do we call? And I'm like, well, yeah. And if we all knew the answer to that, we would just be executing.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just means you have to get actually critical. You have to brainstorm. You have to think harder, faster, consider more options, literally sit in front of a whiteboard and do hard work and just go deeper.
So here's
harder, be creative. This is what we do all the time. Now be creative about your business, not just the next promo or spot that you're going to produce.
Or here's some common things that are happening with the coronavirus. So let's just talk about a general thing that we can all relate to, but things that we've heard that we know aren't quite right, but we're also afraid to kind of mention them. And that whole fear factor is really playing itself out. When I go to Trader Joe's, there are people wearing gloves, they're wearing masks. If you walk down the aisle that a person in Trader Joe's is walking down, they look at you like you're invading their space and going to spit Corona on them. And in Southern Oregon, we have, I think we have 0 deaths right now. So nobody's really truly at physical danger. We're not in the epicenter in that process. If I drive from Trader Joe's to Lowe's, Lowe's, people aren't wearing masks. They're not wearing gloves. It's the same region. They're within a mile. And you just realize like the market or the people that attend one store or the other are thinking differently about the problem. So for me, like, how do you recognize what's right, what's good for you, and then be able to think through the problem so you can be free like the Lowe's people or safe like the Trader Joe's people and know that, and without really kind of creating a global or universal need for it. So I think hopefully that kind of relates to people of like what we're really trying to process with the virus also works in business. Hey, how do I know which practice or what belief is right for me, and how to allow myself to do that without caring what other people think or moving beyond what other people are doing to something that's a better practice for you or your business or organization. So I call that critical thinking. I want people to identify the issues on both sides, not just the side that they love. This is like opinion trumps knowledge. We can't have that be true. So both sides recognize your side of the equation and the pros and cons, as well as the other side of the equation, pros and cons, and move beyond just mere opinion.
Yeah, I think that's such a good one. And I'll just say this, I think as owners, we all know this, that we can bring together our entire teams and we can have these discussions about where are we going and what are we doing. And I think as a leader, one of your jobs is to say, okay, thanks for sharing that opinion, but then also looking for what are the true deep insights based on what we know is true, not just those guesses, hunches, and opinion, and distinguish between those two is obviously really important. Well, Tim, we're about almost a minute from our half-hour slot. We should at least talk a little bit about what we want to dive into as this week unfolds. But before we even do that, I have to mention my good friend, Adam at Friends of Mine, Adam Espinoza, for those of you that know him. He does have the virus and he's been on a respirator. And I just got good news today from his business partner, Jeremy, that he's been off the ventilator, I think, for 2 days. So fingers crossed and knocking on wood and saying a prayer for Adam and sending him best wishes. So if you know Adam, certainly give him a shout out or just be thinking of him and hope that he recovers quickly. But Tim, this other question is, what should we, in terms of what we're going to cover this week, we could obviously be getting into, have you gotten your money yet from the PPP or an EIDL loan? I'm also wondering if people here want to know more about this idea, this concept of the AC/DC that we had brewing. We could certainly revisit that, and I'm happy to share that link. What else is on people's minds that we're going to get into?
Yeah, I think the ability to be a leader helps you move beyond just worry, thought, opinion, concern, to really strategic ideas, thinking through things in a critical way, and moving yourself and your company beyond just the day-to-day issues. I think the toilet paper myth for us this week is really just start with the idea of like, where have you been focusing? And now that you know what the issues are, have you realized there's something else? I want to be able to process with people this week and be able to get some other business owners' voices here. I appreciate PJ joining us today, but other business owners' issues here, and start processing the real data now that we have some understanding of where the projects are, what kind of work there is available to us, and what our clients and employees need. What are the magic pieces we can put together to build a strategy? I like to say business owners bring us the compass, strategy builds the roadmap. And we want to be able to map out really some plans and strategies for these business owners.
Man, it sounds like you're going to answer the ageless question of where is the cheese moving? And I love that idea, right? Like, it would be really cool for us to get practical and say, hey, let's be talking to these types of brands and these industries, these sectors, these verticals, because this is where the opportunities are shifting. Because clearly the cheese is not going away; it's simply moving.
So tomorrow, let's tackle the Justin Barnes pointed out there that the SAG has now changed their terms for stock footage with using SAG actors, and that one little shift there is going to create a new marketplace available for many of our clients. So tomorrow, we'll just be very practical. Find a case study like that and start walking through what are the possibilities, what can we see, and what's available to us and our clients to get the work done.
Yeah, I'm going to post that right before we sign off, because I dropped that in the Slack channel inside operations on 7 Ingredients. And here that is. So if you guys want to find out what that's about, dig into that. We're going to speak to some of the experts that we know to see what that opportunity is about. But it could be really meaningful, especially for people that are so dependent on live action or on assets that they normally would have to pay a premium for, et cetera. All right, well, thanks again to PJ for jumping in with us. Tim, appreciate the conversation today, and I look forward to what the rest of the week is gonna turn into. My optimism is slowly growing day by day, so here we go.
Yep, it's good to be part of this conversation, and I'm thankful for all of you for listening, being members of this group, and keep the questions coming. We'd be happy to have the conversation with you as well.
All right, everyone, have a great Monday. We'll see a lot of you in the Slack channel inside 7 Ingredients, and until then, until tomorrow, we'll be back at the same time. See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.